So this is the Eliminating Barriers to Reentry panel, and hopefully you can sit and enjoy this conversation. We have a wonderful panel ready for you all. I'm Roberta Meyers Douglas. Everybody calls me Toni. I'm the Vice President of State Strategy at the Legal Action Center. We are a national nonprofit that's been around for 50 years fighting to build a healthier, more equitable, and just nation through legal services in New York City, impact litigation, policy advocacy, training, coalition building, and technical assistance. So that's who I am. You've heard a lot about what reentry involves, and it's pretty much everything that involves living and being in the community. And the late Eddie Ellis, who I love dearly out of New York, and his partner, Dr. Divine Pryor, who started New Leadership, they talked about new entry because we know that we're talking about a lot of people who didn't really have a chance to be active members and participating members in society before coming in contact with the criminal legal system. So we need to be thoughtful about that and think about that as services are being created and made and programs are being made to address the many issues. And so again, reentry is big. It's enormous because we're talking about complex lives, complex needs. So we're not covering everything on this panel. We'll be touching on some very important issues that are related to being and living in a community. The panel following us will touch on employment. We may talk a little bit about that. But who we have on our panel, and I'm going to sit down after I do this. My job is to give a little bit of introduction. So to my right, we have Robyn Hasan. She's the Executive Director of Women on the Rise, extraordinaire, their fearless leader, which is a grassroots organization led by women of color who are targeted and or impacted by the criminal legal system. Their work continues to keep Georgia and national discussions about criminal legal reform and thoughts of when people talk about the strength and leadership of directly impacted people, they do think of Women on the Rise and its members. Rachel Holmes. Rachel, you're sitting next to her, thank you. Rachel Holmes is a managing attorney at the Georgia Justice Project, who I'm told is the resident expert on probation. All right, now, listen, y'all, listen. She will talk a little bit about early termination of probation, which is an important part of reentry because we have people who are coming out of incarceration who are still under supervision, under community supervision. So part of their plight is to get from under the surveillance and oppression of the community supervision system. So we have to think about that and talk about that because that does impact people's lives. Rachel provides holistic criminal defense and representation to individuals with criminal record issues in Georgia. We have Eloise Edmonds, who's an author, activist, and an overcomer who volunteers her time to support people inside the correctional system. She'll also be talking about some of the housing challenges that people have to deal with when coming out of the system. Next, we have Lola George, a Georgia peach. Yes, oh yes. A veteran, a graduate of Hampton University, and a teacher who is committed to educating people inside the Georgia Department of Corrections. She currently serves as the education liaison for It Takes a Village Counseling Services, LLC. And last but certainly not least, okay, we have Kareemah Hanifa, who's the lead community organizer for the Inner City Muslim Action Network, ATL, in case y'all didn't know what IMAN stood for, where she spends her time advocating to expand restoration of rights for people with conviction records, including voting rights and access to higher education. Without further ado, I am turning this panel over to these beautiful ladies.
Thank you, Toni. First, I would like to say we are definitely addressing the issues of reentry. Myself, I had a Very difficult reentry after 10 years of serving 10 years inside of Georgia State's prisons. Once I came home, I was released early because of COVID. I came home in March of 2020. And when I was released into homelessness. And it became where there was no resources, there was no kind of support that they were giving me. Class you take as a joke, and all of the resources did not pan out. And I had to find a place to stay before the end of the week or I was going back to prison. So reentry is very important to me, which is why we fight for that within Women on the Rise, because I know without Women on the Rise, I would have had to go back and serve 2.5 more years of prison. And so I want to turn this over to Rachel to ask her about her work with probation and parole, simply because my probation officer is the one who told me I was going to have to go back to prison if I didn't find a place. So I'm very interested, because this month will be 3 years, so I'll be reaching out to you about being eligible for early termination and of probation, and also how we can advocate for ourselves, because we know we do not have the resources to hire attorneys or anyone to actually help us with this process.
Yes, and that's why SB 105 was a bill that was passed back in 2021, which enables every individual to be eligible for earlier termination of probation after 3 years. So as long as an individual has not had a revocation in the last 24 months, which actually means incarceration again, that was a result and because of a revocation, and has had no new arrest, and has also completed and paid all the restitution, not fines, but actual restitution that's paid back to victim, then you are eligible for early termination. And what is one of the things that's so important with that is that you do not have to have an attorney to advocate for yourself for that. Under SB 105, early termination of probation starts from your probation officer. So they're the person that's going to petition the court for early termination. There's two different pathways is kind of the way we talk about it, and one of them is a probation officer must early terminate, and the other ones they may petition for it. But why it's so important is for everybody to understand when you become eligible and what is necessary, so that way you can advocate for yourself when you hit that 3-year mark. We don't want to leave it up to probation officers to get through their caseload, know that you're eligible, and actually petition the court for that. Another really important part is they have to send something to the court every year. So every year that you're on probation past that 3-year mark, whether or not it is a petition for early termination or what is called a progress report, where they have to tell the judge how the individual is doing on probation, something must be sent to the court. So that enables an individual to kind of also, if they're not eligible at the 3-year mark, shows the judge every year when they're eligible for that and what's going on. If you're, and also everybody's always able to petition for themselves. So if you're not eligible under SB 105, but you still want to petition, you're still eligible. And either way, if a petition is filed, either by yourself or by a probation officer, what's really important is that you have the right to be heard by a judge. You might have seen in the past a lot of times people file for early terminations of probations and they're just never heard by a judge, or they're just denied. SB 105 enables every single individual to get in front of a judge and explain what has changed, how the probation is a barrier to their life, and why getting off of probation is what should happen in their case. And that ability for somebody to advocate for themselves, whether that's through an attorney, and at Georgia Justice Project we do represent individuals everywhere in Metro Atlanta under that. So if you are eligible for early termination, please do reach out to us. But advocating for yourself and telling your story to the judge and being able to be heard is something that we thought was very important in this situation as well.
Okay, I have please. Is it work? Okay, there we go. I had a question. So what if, and a lot of us know that sometimes you don't have that probation officer who would do that for you, and you're saying advocate for yourself. So what is the process for that when they need to advocate for themselves?
So what I will say is a couple different things. One is, I understand it's very difficult to get in touch with a probation officer. A lot of times, by the time you're hitting that 3-year mark, you're on non-report. You don't even actually have a probation officer. There is a duty probation officer that is on duty every day out there. And what we are being told by Department of Community Supervision is that if you do not have a probation officer, you can call it at the front desk. You should get in touch with the chief supervisor who will then look at your case. Another thing is that they have actually set up an email. DCS has set up an email, early termination probation email at DCS that goes not just to the level of probation officers, but to somebody that is reviewing and will respond to your request within 48 hours. And we actually at Georgia Justice Project meet with some individuals at DCS that review that and talk to them about issues that they're seeing, so we can then try to figure out why somebody is not being eligible for early termination and talk through that. So that's one way you can advocate. But I would say the best way is the first time you meet with probation or the next time you meet with a probation officer is say, look, I know my 3-year date is this, I'm working towards it, and what do you want to have seen by then? Because we have talked to individuals that probation officer will say, hey, I want you to have steady employment for 6 months, or I want you to have housing. And so speaking to your probation officer early on about what it is that they'll want to see so you can work towards that, check all those boxes, see what it is that they want you to work towards. Sometimes usually what we've seen is either employment or housing. And if which we know probation's a barrier to get employment and housing. So it's just a circle. But if you're running into those issues, we do have some information on our website as well to ways to pro se forms to fill out if they're not going to do it for yourself, as well as ways to advocate if you do get a hearing or with your probation officer. And we're happy to discuss those if those become issues. But your probation officer should be reviewing it. And if they're not, reach out to either us or the email because somebody else will make them review the case.
Thank you so much, Rachel. That's so helpful, even to me. So thank you. So next, I wanted to introduce Eloise. So Eloise is a part of a group that I used to go to inside of prison called the Acorn Group. And what's so special about Eloise, for those who don't know her, is she makes you face things you do not want to face. And she, I heard an amen back there. That's the truth. Yeah, okay, there we go. And she calls you out. But the good thing about that is you're able to deal with some issues that, when you're in prison, you're not placed in a position to deal with issues. You just are trying to survive. And Eloise offers a group that actually helps you look inside to say, why did I end up here in the first place? And a lot of the issues are not because someone just committed an offense to go to prison. It's a lot much deeper than that. So Eloise, I would like for you to tell us about the group and the reason why this group is important to you, especially after you spent so many years inside prison yourself.
Thank you. And I want to thank each one of you for your time. That's your most valued asset. You don't know when it's coming and you don't know when it's going. Thank you. Love you more, Patricia. Hello, everybody. No, I'm not bashful. My name's Eloise Edmonds. I served a term of 27 years in the Georgia State Penal System. Might I add, for what reason? About 80 counts of armed robbery. But I'm here today. I'm here. I go to Lee Arundel. I got out in 2005. I started with Lee Arundel in about 2006. I went back. Let me just be honest with you. I had no intentions of serving all that time, playing all those games, and going back into the system to try to help someone. But there is a creator that's greater than me. So, there you go. I'm back in the prison. We work with a book, we work with different books, but the one we're working with now is called What Happened to You? And we're called the Acorn Group. In order to find out the consistencies of the acorn, the tree, the acorn, the oak tree, you need to go back to the little seed. What happened to us? Each one of us in our own way has trauma. Trauma has been there. Had it not been there, you wouldn't be interested in the betterment of another human being. Now, you can prove me wrong. However, in the group, what happened to you, Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey, the persons in this book. So it's not an easy fate to face what has happened to you. Sometimes we like to put it in the back of our mind. But we're doing this in hopes of creating assets as opposed to liabilities, coming back to this free world, so to say. It's not free. I'm just saying that. The free world, so to say. In this group, yes, Robyn was in there, a very good participant. Very good. She always say, Eloise, you're just so negative. You're just so negative. I thought I was doing pretty good. So anyway, we work with the ladies, and that's, when we speak of barriers to reentry, it doesn't start from coming out of the prison. The barriers are inside the person. That's where the barriers are. If we work with those barriers, honestly, if you honestly work with what's inside of you and get to know who you are, you have a better shot on this stage out here. Agree or disagree? All right. So we work with that. And let me just tell you a little bit about my reentry to this arena called freedom. My first night after so many years in prison, I had to sleep in, what is that now? Greyhound's bus station. I messed up the communication and relationship with my family. I have no family support. Okay? I told the truth in the beginning. I bore the truth. I had a lot to do with that. That was such a terrible situation. I was in a woman's prison for years, and then now here I am, homeless in a bus station. And that was one of the worst nights of my life. And I'm not no scary person. I told you I was locked up for 80 counts of armed robbery, so I couldn't be that scary. So now, had it not been for one of the persons that's sitting in this room right now, just throw your hand up. D, you know who I'm talking to. Throw your hand up. Her and another friend of mine allowed me to get an extended stay so I wouldn't have to stay there again. I wouldn't have to stay there. So the reentry help came from community, a friend, from a friend, and God knows I'll never be able to repair for that. So back to the prison. I go every Monday, and I work with Peachtree Road. I work with Women on the Rise. I work with women in transition. My mission is to help those that want to help themselves. You can't make a person want to be free. And the best freedom, it comes from inside. I'm going to pass the one a little bit.
Thank you. I want to say Eloise is very amazing, even though I say she is negative. The reason I say she's negative is I think she does that to bring something out of me, make me face things that I don't want to face. Because, for those who know me, I'm a little quiet. And she noticed that. You know, I sit in the background a lot. I don't say much. And Eloise made me come out and say something, but she was saying things that would make me want to react to say something. So I appreciate you. And also, just a little side note, when I did get out and Women on the Rise helped me, it was Eloise and her group who actually got me a place to live. They brought me all kinds of stuff. I had like 2 outfits, and they just took me shopping. They did so much for me. Eloise drove me all around Atlanta trying to find me a place to live, and they helped me. So I really appreciate y'all. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. I thank you. I can't repay you for that. You was telling about it. Oh, God. Miss George.
Hey, Robyn.
So, Miss George, Miss Lola George, I'm so used to calling her Miss George because I was her teacher's aide inside of Pulaski State Prison when I was there. And it's amazing to see her on the outside. And it's amazing to actually be a part of her on the inside because she is exactly how she is now as she was when we were inside. And again, for those who have been inside, they know that the treatment you receive inside is just, unspeakable. But Ms. George never treated us like that. She, when we were there, we felt like we was in a real job. She treated us just like we were working a job and not as the I word that I don't like to say. But I really do admire her for that. And I really wanted to bring her up here to talk about education inside prison, because we know that a lot of people don't see education as important in there. So I want to say, as a teacher and as an educator, what made you decide to come inside of a prison to actually teach women?
That's a good question, Robyn. I had taught in the public school system for some 15 years in North Carolina before moving back to Georgia. And the importance of education on the outside of prison, it didn't seem like it was that important to a lot of students or some parents. And so, but once I started teaching in prison, the women, and I also taught 1 year at a men's prison at Dooley State Prison, realized that education was the answer, and it's still the answer. I had a lot of women that didn't think that they could get a high school diploma or graduate from high school. And myself, along with some great teachers' aides, you guys really made me look good. And we were able to graduate a lot of women at Pulaski with their GED. And for the first time, a lot of women realized that they had the ability to learn and to achieve. And that's how you guys paid me. Yeah.
Well, that has me wondering now, since you no longer work there. So what made you decide to stay and work within Reentry? Like, what's important to you about Reentry work now?
What's important to me about Reentry, like I told you ladies when I was there, we as citizens, we're all one footstep or one slip away from being incarcerated. And a lot of people don't realize that you could get into an altercation minding your own business. Something happened, and now you're incarcerated. And you can say what you have done, but you can't say you can never say what you won't do when you're faced in a situation. So I never looked at you guys or you ladies other than being human, because you are. And I think that's the element that's missing. Even though you have to pay your debt to society, you're still a human being.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So, Miss Kareemah. So, Kareemah, you guys, I've been friends with her since I first came into the system in 2010. We were both Muslims inside. And I think she saw the timidness in me, and she was really nice to me. And I remember her being really nice to me, and how my parents would come see me on Fridays because they were out of state, and she was nice to them. My parents would ask me all the time about Kareemah. So I'm really honored that she got out after 26 years inside prison and is doing this work. We work together a lot, and it's just like being able to keep a friendship that we developed inside on the outside is amazing to me. I think one thing I really love about her is her spirit and if you see her friends with her on Facebook, she's everywhere. You know, it makes you feel like I ain't doing nothing when you look at Kareemah. Because she's everywhere, taking pictures and doing everywhere. And I think she just really wants to experience life, you know, because so much was taken from her. So I want to ask you about your education, though. I know inside you did education at Life University. So tell me, in such a dark place inside a prison, what made you think about the importance of education on a higher level?
All right, let's see. Just a little backstory. Yes, first of all, Bismillah. That means in the name of God, by the way. Like, put God first at all times. I went in at the age of 15 years old. And so, because I went in so young, I still was learning myself. I was still figuring out myself. I was still figuring out life. At some point on that journey, for many, many years, I lived in a state of almost hopelessness, right? Like, when I first got locked up as a 15-year-old, I think I thought I was like locked up for shoplifting, you know, this wasn't real. I was having some disassociation happening, you know, like this is kiddie camp. Like I was 15. By the time I was about 20, I realized I had a life sentence and I was never getting out. Probably in 10 years in, so by the time I was 25, I started feeling very hopeless, like this is it for me. By 30, I decided that I had to thrive where I was. I had to make the best of whatever the situation was, and if I wasn't ever going to get out, I was going to just be the greatest human being I could be. And being that greatest human being included helping other people. It gave me purpose. It made me feel like I was somebody that I could help you, you know? As someone who went in at 15 years old, I had never walked across a stage in my life. The first time I walked across the stage was in 2020 when I received my associates in positive human development and social change at Life University. I started my associates while I was still incarcerated at Arendelle State Prison in 2016, I think it was. From there, I stayed connected to my Life University family, which was faculty and staff. They were my support system. Like I do have family, and I did have family, but outside of my immediate family, which were people that I only saw on Saturdays or Sundays for 8 hours for 26 years, my college professors were there Monday through Friday from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 p.m. at night. And so that became my support system. And so when I came home, God made it where my mother lives literally 8 minutes from Life University. So I was able to go to school on campus. I was able to get that, support that I needed. After I got my associates, I was accepted into the bachelor's program. So God willing, on March the 24th, which is 2 Fridays from now, at 12 o'clock, I will be commensurating, walking across the stage, receiving my bachelor's in psychology. And on yesterday, I was in a meeting. It was so weird. My coworker is here. He didn't know what was going on. I received an email that said, congratulations, you've been accepted into the master's program. And I was like, ooh, ooh. And my coworker was like, well, congratulations, Sister Kareemah, whatever you got going on over there, right? I just was so excited. Higher education is so important because academia improves your opportunities and your chances to be successful once you are released. I have another person I was incarcerated with in the audience. I won't forget, she came home and she was kind of struggling, and she said to me, I'm looking for a job. And I said, girl, don't you know these people will pay you for what you've been through? And she was like, they will? I was like, yeah, lived experience, put it on your application. And she was like, okay. I was like, you got some college education? She was like, yeah. I always tell people, as someone that is directly impacted by the criminal justice system, I got to work twice as hard as everybody else, because I got to prove myself. But I also feel like my life sets an example for other people, that if I can do it, you could do it. Like, as someone that went in at 15 years old and came out at 41, when they didn't even have cell phones, when they didn't even have Cash App, was unfathomable to me. I was like, what you mean it's money in the phone? What you mean? It's money in the phone? They're like, yeah, Cash App. I'm like, nah, I don't want that, right? I remember, but these are just like ways in which my life has improved through access to education, right? And if anybody would have told me, not before I got incarcerated, but after I received those 2 consecutive life sentences, that I would have an opportunity to excel double what my counterparts, like I come home and people that never been incarcerated before, they just kind of sitting on the sidelines looking at me, right? And I'm just like going. But education helped me to see things different. It allowed me to identify systems. It allowed me to identify problems. And we all know you can complain about a problem, but if you don't do something about it, you just complaining. Right? So it enables me to identify a problem and create a solution. And I solve that, and I identify another problem, and I create the solution. And I always tell people, when I die, I don't want no street named after me. I want a tree planted in my name so the people can still eat from it long after I'm dead and gone, right? That's how I live my life, as a servant, right? Which takes me into the second piece of what I do as a lead organizer. I have been championing the No Taxation Without Representation campaign with the Inner City Muslim Action Network. So in case you don't know, there are a little under now, because some people have been taken off of supervision, there are 266,000 individuals in the state of Georgia that are considered disenfranchised citizens, right? Or disenfranchised voters. So the word disenfranchised means to block the vote. So in the state of Georgia, if you are currently on probation or parole, it is against the law for you to even accidentally register to vote. That is punishable by prison or jail time, and people don't know that. So as someone who believed, oh, I served my time, and I'm gonna get out, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do that, well, they reminded me when I was trying to get a driver's license, and they said, would you like to register to vote? And I'm just trying to get to the next part of the application. So I checked the thing, yes. At that point, we don't want to do stuff till they say you can't do it, right? If they tell you can't do it, then you want to do it. Oh, you can't ride a bicycle in the dark. Oh, you're going to ride a bicycle in the dark. So I checked the box, and as soon as I checked the box, it says, if you are currently on probation or parole, it is against the law, punishable by and I started freaking out. I was like trying to go back. I kept hitting the go back button. I called my sister. I said, these folks finna lock me up. I just need a driver's license. But then I learned that I wasn't the only one that had been faced with that problem. And I also learned that while identifying a problem, I should also identify a solution. So my husband started the campaign, and I have continued to carry the baton, which is the No Taxation Without Representation campaign. And I don't know who's in control of the slide, but is it okay if I share the slide? I would like to share a trailer for a video that Paige did as an ambassador for Represent Justice.
I ain't gonna share with you right now, but I want to say on today, I am so grateful that I don't look like what I've been through.
When I was 20 years old, I went to prison for 10 years, but the civil death of incarceration lasts long after release. There are 19 million Americans that are currently impacted, either in prison or on probation or parole.
People who are directly impacted should lead the movement for voting rights. Those who are closest to the problem are those who should lead in the problem.
Georgia has an incarceration rate of 968 per 100,000 people. We want you guys to know that you matter. Your vote is your voice. The definition of politics in layman's terms is who gets what, when, and where. I vote in y'all's honor.
I really want to thank y'all for that because we were down in Savannah when y'all did that, and I thought that was the greatest idea to have, vote in my honor because myself, I can't vote. And Walisha actually voted for me last time that there was voting. Yeah. And she voted in my honor. And she actually asked me, who do you want to vote for? And I told her. and she's like, well, I wasn't going with them. I said, but you asked. And so she's like, all right. Yeah. And she did it. And she said, let me know. I voted for, and I'm like, thank you. I appreciate that. And it just made me feel like a part of the system. And, when we have to look at the things that they want us to do other things as citizens, but then you take certain voting rights, like, I'm a homeowner, but I have to pay taxes and everything like that, but I cannot say who represents me in my own, my own state, my part of town. It just doesn't seem fair to me. So I love that you're fighting for that, and we're gonna work on that and continue to work on that. Yes, exactly. Yes. So I'm going to close out just by saying that I'm glad you all are, listening to the barriers of reentry and why reentry is so important. I think that society is so hell-bent on us with punishment when it comes to people who commit an offense and not finding the root causes of why it's even committed in the first place. But one thing that we also are trying to bring light to is the fact that reentry is really a joke when it comes to what the state provides. And so that's part of what Women on the Rise is doing to actually create a booklet called What to Really Expect. And that is to help people when they come home to actually know when you go look at an apartment that says, $1,500 for a 4-bedroom house, they know that's a scam. Because I can't tell you how many of my sisters have come to us like, I've paid money and this was a scam, I got scammed out of money or things like that, or employment. It's like you never have to pay to get a job, But if you're locked up, like Kareemah said, since she was 15 and you're getting out 20, 30 years later, you don't know any better. You don't know what's going on out here in society. So that's why it's so important for us to put together this booklet to actually get inside to the ladies. We have a group on the side called Women on the Rise Inside, and we keep them updated about what's really going on out here. So it can give them a little bit more prepared to come home and know what to expect. And also about language that I learned from Paige about how important language is, because inside we called each other inmate, offender. I tell also everybody quit drinking the Kool-Aid because they call us that and we just start calling each other that. And we didn't realize the harm that was causing. And so we're actually getting them to stop doing that. Exactly, felon. It's offensive language. It really is offensive language. And it's really, when we're talking to city council and things like that, and we're telling them, and they say felon or inmate, and to correct them, I've never gotten any pushback. It's like, oh, okay, it's simply because they don't know. And so it's up to us to educate them and let them know the correct terms that we need them to use to not have a demeaning language. Because once you stop treating us that way, then maybe some things can change, because that's y'all looking at us that way. So thank you all very much. Oh, and thank y'all too. Thank you all.